Power to the people. Uhuru. We've already heard real and inspired eloquence this morning, so I'm just going to try to make a little bit of sense, if I can. As was stated, what we're supposed to be talking about this morning is the historic significance of the Black is Back Coalition's founding. The simple truth of the matter is that we were compelled into existence. Compelled into existence. It wasn't something that we thought about for a long time. If we had, we would have brought it into existence many years before. But we were compelled into existence by the unprecedented crisis and the total political disarray that descended on Black America with the election of the first Black president. That created a crisis that had to be responded to. A relatively small group of organizations and individuals were called together by Brother Yeshua Taylor and by others to band together behind principles of solidarity and anti-imperialist resistance all over the world, and behind a commitment to Black people's self-determination and to the self-determination of all other oppressed people in the world. Over the 5 past decades or so, there have always been plenty of organizations on the Black political scene that claimed to be committed to the principles of self-determination and who said that they were opposed to imperialism. In fact, that was a fairly common position to take back in the day. But as the Barack Obama presidential campaign gained momentum, we witnessed a total collapse of what we used to recognize as a Black left in the United States. In fact, we saw a similar collapse of the white left as well. Friends and comrades whom we had known and worked with for decades. These are people that we thought we knew. We thought we knew well. Those same former friends and comrades repudiated not just us, but their own previous lives, while conveniently forgetting every lesson that was taught by generations of our heroes and heroines and leaders. They were willing to do all of that just to see a Black face in the highest echelons of power. They became supporters of the empire that they formerly said they abhorred and despised. And that, their repudiation, created a profound and very personal, for many of us, personal crisis for those of us who, unlike them, had not lost our minds. One of the first things that had to be done was to look around and see who was still standing for self-determination and for social justice and against U.S. imperialism, because all of that was now in doubt. It seemed like nobody was standing. So we had to count out our hands and fingers and toes to see who was left, who was surviving this avalanche of Obama delirium. In 2009, there was a real question as to who would even pay lip service like they used to the principles of independent Black politics that had been taken for granted among so many people some time ago. It was as if Obama euphoria had swept aside the Black political memory itself. Like none of these things that we participated in together, none of our victories and none of our failures, like as if none of that happened once Obama came on the scene. Wow. As if just having a Black person in a nominal position of power is what Malcolm died for and what King died for and what all of our other ancestors died for, just to see some Black family walk into the White House. That was supposed to be our reason for being here on this earth. It wasn't just a crisis of Black politics. It felt as if there had been a wholesale liquidation of black politics, as if we did not necessarily know where we were supposed to begin in a discussion with these strange people who we thought we used to know, who were now in some kind of weird species called Obamites. So Brother Yusha Taylor had to do a head count to see who was left, to see who was willing to collaborate, to see who still had some affinity with some kind of principles, who would march publicly behind those principles, and who would join together in some kind of righteous coalition, as righteous as we could make it. The name Black is Back Coalition was chosen, quite frankly, because for a while it seemed that real black politics had been buried under an avalanche of Obamacism, and that it was necessary to say to the world, no, 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 there are still some of us here, so therefore black is back. I actually liked it because it sounded like James Brown came up with the name. It was catchy. So this coalition is a product of the black political crisis that came to a head with the election of the first black president. Notice I said came to a head with the election of the first black president. It didn't just somehow materialize with Obama, but it came to a head with that election. Therefore, since that is how we were born as a coalition, it is inevitable and it is correct that our conduct and our practice must be judged in the context of our stance regarding this president. That's how we got here, and that's how we should be judged, by ourselves and by others. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure that everyone here has heard criticism of the Black is Back coalition, that all we do is badmouth Obama. We certainly hear that at Black Agenda Report, but that is part of our job as revolutionaries. We oppose imperialism, and he is the imperial chief. So who else we gonna badmouth? He's number one on the list. We oppose white supremacy and the white supremacist machinery in the United States, and he is head of that state. So he's number one on the list to badmouth. We'll get to the others after him. We oppose the rule of the rich. He is the world's most prominent servant of the rich. So we have to put him at the top of the list. So of course we oppose him, and anybody who does not oppose him has in fact surrendered to white supremacy. They have surrendered to imperialism, and they have surrendered to the lords of capital. And that's the difference between us and them. But our mission at Black is Back is different than the mission of other anti-imperialists, and different than the mission of other socialists. And I say socialists because I've looked around at every Black is Back conference, and I think all of us are socialists. But our mission is somewhat different. There is another dimension to our mission. We came together to show that self-determinationist currents are still alive among black people in the United States. It was absolutely necessary at that Obama moment to show that. We were compelled, and we remain compelled, to point out at every juncture that black faces in high places is not the same thing as black self-determination. And in fact, black people's desire to see black faces in places of nominal power can easily, and we have seen it in the flesh, can easily lead to a situation that is the opposite of black self-determination. It becomes a tool of the enemy, a tool that allows him to organize black people into his army and against black people's own interests. It is the contradiction that became primary in the black political entity after the civil rights victories of the 60s, and which black revolutionaries have not successfully countered or confronted ever since. This is a contradiction that remains outstanding and became acute with the advent of this first black president, but he didn't create it. Right. That contradiction is between a genuine struggle for self-determination, which can only be waged in opposition to capitalist power, and the urge to support those blacks who are handpicked by capitalist power. So it is a fundamental contradiction. Today, to be an Obamite is to be a cheerleader for imperialism. It is to be a flunky for Wall Street. And it is to be a collaborator with the historical enemies of black people and the enemies of all oppressed people all across the world. Now, it's good to say that the Obamites are not as loud and as proud as they used to be. They're not as aggressive as they used to be. And in fact, many of them have gone silent for the simple reason that they have run out of things to say. They have run out of excuses for Mr. Obama. Others among them have gotten very busy rewriting their own histories as Obamites. They make up false histories in which they were constructive critics of his politics, when in fact they spent all of those years fooling themselves and trying to fool everybody around them about the real nature of the Obama regime. These were not passive people. These people were actively trying to present a reality to black people that either they knew did not exist or they were too stupid to see existed. Whether they were stupid or knew, it showed that they were unfit to call themselves anything like a leader. That's right. Our job was to break with them, these misleaders who had abandoned our people's historical struggle. And of course, that is the greatest crime that they committed. Yes. Our job continues to be to prevent them from rewriting the historical record, because it's not theirs to rewrite. We saw what we saw, and it's got to go down the way it was. Yes. We have to prevent them from absolving themselves from responsibility for the political catastrophe that they actively helped to create. These misleaders did not simply make a mistake. They did not innocently miscalculate. They were not just wishful thinkers. They joyously ran straight into the enemy camp. They ran to touch the hem of the garment of the first candidate to ever spend $1 billion on the presidency. And that was not his money, that was Wall Street's money. It's not a matter of forgiving these misleaders, and it's not a matter just of condemning them. It is mostly a matter of simply telling the truth. That is our obligation. Amilcar Cabral said, "Tell no lies," and we heard him. It is an indispensable element of the political education process to tell the truth. It is the most essential element of political education. We out the misleaders, and we make sure that they stay outed forever. And we do that not just because it gives us satisfaction, although I get much satisfaction from doing that. We do it to mitigate the harm that they do to the people. Political education is more important than it has been in my lifetime.
Yes.
The global economic crisis was brought about because of deep and accumulating contradictions in the capitalist system. That is, because of these objective reasons that all of us, and any of us all over the world, can study. However, the black political crisis is rooted in contradictions in our people's relationship to white power and to corporate power structures in the United States and the world. That is that other dimension that I'm talking about, and that brings about another obligation if you are a member of the Black is Back Coalition. There was never any question that we, black folks, would be economically devastated by the meltdown of 2008. That was in the cards. We were in the bottom then, and we were going to go further to the bottom after the meltdown. Nothing could have averted that. But it was not foreordained that our people would rush into the enemy camp at the very moment that the master's house was on fire. That is our problem. Confronting that is our responsibility. It goes beyond our responsibility to make an objective analysis of the larger contradictions that exist in capitalism. And because our people rushed so deliriously into the master's house to revel in the glow of a black president, we collectively slept through a critical juncture in human history. In other words, black people were partying while an epochal development in the history of the world was occurring. And it was as if we weren't there on the same planet that was experiencing this global collapse, or one step further towards collapse of the entire world system. We at Black is Back have tried to make the necessary connections between the larger reality, that is the larger situation in the world, and our specific contradictions that we are compelled to confront. But the general black political conversation remains disconnected from the global crisis, disconnected from the world that is undergoing this tremendous change. How different that is, this disconnect, where people seem to operate as if the rest of the world is not impacting on their lives, and what they do is not impacting on the rest of the world. How different that is from 2 generations ago, when our people's pulse seemed to beat to the same rhythm as the world that was in motion back then. It's true that the US population at large is also less attuned to the real world that is out there. So it's not just us. But that makes our political work at the coalition even more critical, especially as the pace of change, the pace specifically of decline, as that pace accelerates, our political work becomes even more important, because we have to keep up with the reality, or else how are we going to tell the truth?
Right on.
Political education becomes an even higher priority. That's not by our choice. That is what the changing world, this accelerating pace of change, is forcing upon us. That is especially critical because our misleaders are actively discouraging people from engaging in any kind of critical analysis of what is happening to them. I'm not talking about discouraging people from doing an analysis of what Obama is doing. These people are trying to keep our folks from even examining their own condition. Bill Fletcher, and I always like to use Bill Fletcher as my straw man. That's his job forever. Bill Fletcher leads people to believe that he is both a socialist and that he is a Pan-Africanist. And yet, in the 2012 election, he had the nerve to declare that it did not matter where the Obama administration stood on the issues, that the issues of war and peace and social justice were irrelevant to the campaign. He actually wrote a headline that said that, don't worry about the issues. All that mattered, according to Fletcher and his co-writer, was that black people and progressives all line up behind the Democrat to defeat the evil Republicans. And it doesn't matter what the issues are, as long as we all just line up in the same line. And yet this man is respected in black and white so-called progressive forums. Michael Eric Dyson. And it was fun kicking his ass. He's billed as both a preacher and as an intellectual. But he only has one song. And that song is that black people need to get in the game. And that game, of course, is whatever game the Democratic Party wants to play. He is playing that game, and he wants all of us to join in. In reality, what Michael Eric Dyson is playing is the people. He's playing the people for the benefit of Wall Street and also for the benefit of his own bank account. It used to be that two charlatans like that would be laughed out of town, but somehow they are stars today. We're using them as an example because they are representative of the rot that has corrupted both the black and left political conversation. And Obama is not responsible for that. Right. The fact that men such as these can pass as progressive black figures means that the very vocabulary of black political discourse has decomposed. Yeah. It seems to lack clarity, and it's been lacking in clarity for a long time. You can't trust people's words because there is a lack of discipline about words. And a lack of discipline about words means people are quite casual about meaning. And if you're casual about meaning, I think you're casual about whether these facts are true. You're only casually honest. And that is a moral problem that we have to confront when we talk about confronting this misleadership. We should not elevate them to some kind of moral equilibrium with us. We know why we do what they do. We suspect the worst in terms of why they do what they do. Those people, and I'm not talking about the misleadership class here, but those people that we used to call our brothers and sisters in struggle were, we have to, I guess, confess, many of them were just lip syncing the struggle. Their ideology was only cosmetic. What they said was just slogans that they had gotten used to mouthing. Their politics was only skin deep, and I mean that in several meanings of the word. Because as soon as a corporate hustler with a tan looked like he might get a chance to sit in the power seat, they joined up with power. We in this room joined up with each other in the attempt to rebuild a movement. And part of the burden, or we could call it part of the mission, that we picked up on was to remake black politics for the current era. That's not a modest goal. In fact, that job is really too big for us, but we got to do it anyway, which means that we got to get bigger and we have to get busier. Part of the job remains to critique and to shame the black misleadership class. And of course, that putrid receptacle for the rich man's politics that is called the Democratic Party. We were the only black folks who took on that conscious responsibility in 2009. The folks who originally gathered in that apartment were the only black folks in the country who said, this is what we have to do. We have to confront power, and we have to confront the internal contradictions that are now let loose among our people. Nobody else picked that up. But that means that nobody else has the responsibility that we assumed. Because we did confront both Obama and the misleaders who flocked to Obama back when it was very lonely to do so. That's why it was only just some folks in one apartment. The Black is Back Coalition has earned its place on the moral and political high ground, and we need to be proud of that. And sometimes we ought to ritually say, "We told you so." Because we gonna tell you so again until you get it. Meanwhile, the Black Misleadership class has totally discredited itself. That was plain for all the world to see at the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. There they sat, they came from all four corners of the country to sit there like flunkies for power on a stage that was owned and controlled by the US government, by imperial power. And they performed like backup singers for a president who serves Wall Street. The same president who, when he had only been in office 100 days, told everybody that he was not going to do anything in particular for black people. And in that case, he kept his word. The black elected misleaders in the Congressional Black Caucus are of no use to us whatsoever. They are only of use to the ruling class. Half of the Congressional Black Caucus voted to continue bombing Libya in 2011. Thus, they endorsed the Euro-American assault and invasion of the African continent.
Yes, they did.
All of the Congressional Black Caucus, every single one of them endorsed Israel's depraved and barbaric assault on Gaza. They are partners, therefore, with the apartheid state. And as partners with the apartheid state, they have nothing to say, nothing about the black condition in the United States or anywhere else. They have forfeited their right to speak. As a body, they have never condemned the U.S. role in the genocide of 6 million Congolese. A genocide that occurred under Clinton, under Bush, and under Obama. And they ain't said a mumbling word about it. 6 million people, the greatest genocide since World War II. Instead, they have gathered all of their energies to rally around Susan Rice when she was thought to be in line to become Secretary of State. They gathered around her to give her undying support, even though she is the individual most complicit over the past 2 decades, since 1994, in the genocide in Central Africa. When we point to these crimes, and they are crimes against humanity by the Congressional Black Caucus, when we point to them, we do so to demonstrate that the Democratic Party, including its black operatives, is as criminal as the Republicans. And that there is absolutely no longer any room in that Democratic Party for black people seeking justice, peace, and self-determination. There is no excuse for being in there. Even Barbara Lee voted to endorse the Israeli apartheid state. So we know it is absolutely bankrupt. The last drip has come out of it. Now that doesn't mean that we have played a role in their discrediting. We simply point out that they have discredited themselves. What do we do? You know, I dreaded having to come up with suggestions about what we do until I realized that you didn't ask me to. So I'm now so grateful. But even though time is up, so I'm going to do like the chairman. And also being, you know, this age, I just forgot what you put up with. I want to say something about Ferguson. Because what struck me about Ferguson was how typical it was.
Yes.
You know, it really took me a day before I could understand why people were calling me up and asking me what I thought about it. Because, I mean, if you really wanted to ask my opinion about the murder of unarmed black folks in the street, then you'd be calling me up every other day. But why today? I didn't understand it. I still don't understand it. But we, of course, are more, not just pleased, we are proud that the brothers and sisters in Ferguson have shown that they have the will to resist. So we can't go around saying that black folks don't want to do anything, and that's why I'm tired of doing all this political work. They don't want to do anything. No, they want to do something. All right. And because they've shown that, that increases our obligation to put more content in the activities that young people in Ferguson, which is just like everywhere else, want to do. And so that's our challenge. Power to the people.
All right.
Thank you.